here I am with one of my cake plates, the second big one that I've gotten the, the nerve up to glaze and fire. And I'm just doing a little bit of a flower design on the top. I don't know if you can see. This is a squirrel bristle brush, squirrel hair. And I'm gonna just, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. I'm just gonna play with getting it to move loosely, just loose lines. See that? Yeah, I'm just playing with turning the brush. And I'm using some Sunset Pink by Coyote. And on here is some Magenta Sky. And this is my test pot. And I just think that is so beautiful. So I'm going to try to make that color happen on the outline of my flower. And so, you know, this is a vertical and this is flat. I'm not sure if it's going to work. I have done a tiny little bijou saucer that came out like this, and the bottom was beautiful and it was very similar. So I remember that and I'm gonna give it a shot. It's worth a try. So I'm loading up my squirrel brush and I'm just gonna twirl some designs. And I'll load it up and just give it a stir and twirl some designs. And it's a really loose design. I'm not trying to force it too much. A little bit. I mean, I have a definite design there. Although when I poured the magenta underneath, it splattered through these holes and all over the top. And I left those splatters because I just think they look kind of cool. So that's what I'm up to here. And I'm gonna just kind of go around. And I always think, like, if it looks pretty before it's glazed, it usually looks prettier after it comes out. Usually, hopefully. I hope I'm not jinxing it. And that's about all for now. No, actually, I'm gonna put some over here. All around. I should have a banding wheel, but I don't. So this is it for this piece. A little bit of brushing and what I do. And you notice how I'm just kind of like slapping it on. I'm not pulling the glaze. I'm not pulling the glaze across the pot. I'm just kind of slapping it on. As if I poured it. It's just I only have this glaze in a pint, so I only have a pint to work with. And that looks about good. All right. So that, I think, is all I want to do. Maybe a couple little dots. Little dot, little dot, little dot, little dot, little dot. And that's kind of how I roll. Pretty loose glazing. So more again later. It's Sharon again, and I'm going to continue glazing this cake plate. And the more complicated your forms get, and the more you push your limits on making pots, the more complicated the glazing gets. It goes hand in hand. And so here I am with this beautiful cake plate that took me many hours to make. And I'm trying to figure out how the heck I'm gonna glaze the pedestal, inside and the outside of the pedestal. And I could dunk the whole thing in my bucket, but my fingers won't have much space to hold on to the edges. It's the bucket, let me bring it over. The bucket is just too narrow and deep. The glaze is down low. And if I was gonna try to do this, you can see my hands won't fit. So the challenge is how to get the glaze on this without making an enormous mess on the pot. I could paint it on, but that's not my gig. I'm not a big painter. So I kind of went through all the different things in the studio to see what fit. I had, oh, where is it? A little bucket somewhere. And I said, well, will this work? And kind of, not really. If I fill it to the top, it might. But then it'll spill over. It's a little narrow. So I was going through all my pots around and bowls around, and I found this one. It's kind of deep. It's wide enough, and maybe it'll do the trick if we're going to try. This is just an old bowl that I made back in 2009, a long time ago. So anyway, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to mix up the glaze in the bucket and pour some into the bowl. And the base of this pedestal base of this cake plate is going to be antique pearl. And showing, decorating the top of it. Earlier in the week, it was one of the first things I did in this glaze session. So I'm going to pour some in. Just got to make sure it's mixed up before you pour it in. I already cleaned this bowl. Now I have no clue if this is going to work or not, but we're going to try. And I don't want to fill this to the top because then it'll overflow. It as it is, it might overflow because it's up pretty high. All right, I always use clean hands when I'm working with pots. And let's try it, see what happens. I'm going to hold it in there a little bit because I like this glaze on thick. I want it to be a creamy pearl color, not a brown. Now I'm going to shake it. Let's see how it went. Oh yeah, worked pretty good. All right, so it didn't go under there. That's easy. I can pour in there and pour out, but that's pretty nice. Nice even dip. So I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to pour this back in there, and we'll get back to pouring in here. First, before I put it down, I will clean up the bottom. I don't want to slime my counter. Okay. So I'm going to turn off and come back in a minute. Okay, so this is antique pearl. I poured it from the bowl back into the bucket. I've stirred it up. And now I want to pour inside the pedestal. And I don't need it to be a really thick application in there because really no one's going to look at it unless they use this as a chip and dip, which I hope not. So what I'm going to do is pour it in, swirl it around, and then pour it out. And it's got a little curve, so it's a little tricky. I'll try to come around this way. Swirl it. Give it a good shake. And I'll just fill in any spots that I missed. You know, that curve on the bottom there makes it a little hard to get an even swirl around. Not bad. So I'll just fill in with a cup. It's just one little spot. And there's enough in there. Yeah, that's it. And back down. All right. That waxed edge. There we go. Put a glaze out for my carvings. And that's the bottom. Okay. Just kind of get the dry stuff going across. All right, so I'm going to pour the antique pearl on the top, and I've waxed parts of my design. And give it a good stir. And I want it kind of thick on the top because I want it to be that creamy color that it becomes. Shake. All right. Now the last part is going to be the sides. I want it to go on the sides. Unfortunately, it's going through my holes, which doesn't please me. Shake. And I'm just going to smooth out some of those lines under there. I don't like them. I'm just going to smooth them out. That should do it. So my fear is that this is going to be so heavy with glaze that it's going to warp like a mushroom. I hope that's not the case. I'm going to fill in some of these spots. And this is, you know, a difficult form to make and a difficult form to glaze. I'll clean up my wax lines with a sponge. And now I just hope for the best. That's all I can do is hope I did all right. And I'll get that off. And I'm going to use this X-Acto and just take some of this line down. I don't like this line. And take it away. That's good. Nice line. just rub. We're gonna rub out, if you look closely, you see any little holes. This glaze dries pretty quickly. So I'm gonna rub any holes. I usually do that before I load the kiln. I double check, you know, my buckets, this bucket's been around a bit. It's getting kind of low. So sometimes you find little bits of sponge in it. Every so often I'll sieve it again. I'll dump the whole bucket through a sieve just to get the little bits of maybe bucket plastic or sponge that might, or even like brush hairs. I know brush hairs will burn off, but sometimes they'll leave a little mark, and I don't want that little mark. So I'll check my whole surface of the pot, of every pot, before it goes in the kiln, and just make sure there's nothing, no foreign substances or materials on the glaze. And you can't always catch them all, and when you don't, and then you open the kiln, there's a little spot you don't want, it's a bummer. But, you know, you do your best, and if you just try to be mindful, hopefully you can come out with nice surfaces. There's a lump I know of. And that's it. And I will go in with a different X-Acto. This one's actually pretty good, and I'll clean out every hole, but I'm not going to do that on camera because that's really boring. So there it is, the cake plate. We'll see what happens in a few days, 2-3 days. I'll get the kiln loaded and running. And thanks for watching. I hope this was informative. And happy potting. Bye.